or repellently distorted, but above all, it changes. The human takes on qualities of the animal or of inert matter. In this sense of the word, horror has one of its earliest manifestations in Canto 25. The body does change in Ovid and Lucan, as Dante will acknowledge here in his audacious challenge to the two Latin poets, but it could be argued that in the Metamorphoses, mutation is presented as a fact rather than as a moral process. It is magical and objective rather than psychological. Dante implies something like this when he says that Ovid, quote, never transformed two individual, front to front natures, so both forms as they meet were ready to exchange their substance. This lines 99 through 101 that we'll get to. That is, Dante suggests that not only will his image of transformation present the external account of an emotional or erotic change, as when a man becomes a snake or a woman becomes a fountain, he will give an account of moral interpenetration and of psychological complexity. The idea of contrapassio, we've met this before, again, Thomas Aquinas' idea, in which the suffering in hell extends or reproduces the sin, gives this mutual transformation a dimension absent from Dante's pre-Christian models he seems to claim. In other words, this idea that you in your afterlife, if you were a thief, you somehow become something different. You become the snake you were in life. Wow. The thief held up his hands. That is to say, again, we're now continuing, right? That is to say, Vanni Fucci's going to continue with his insult. The thief held up his hands when he was through, and God, he cried, making the fig with both, putting a finger between a couple of other fingers. It's a vulgar gesture. Take these, I aim them squarely up at you. So in other words, we have the insulting now towards Dante. We've seen this a couple of times, haven't we? The last time was in the usurpers, right? He stuck his tongue out at him. The serpents were my friends. From that time forth, Dante the poet says, for then one coiled itself about his neck, as if to say, that's all then from your mouth. And another went round his arms to snake them tight and cinch itself in front, so tight they couldn't budge enough to gesture. Alack, Pistoria, Pistoria, why haven't you decreed your own incineration, so that you dwell on earth no more, since you surpass your seed in evil doing? In all the circles of hell, I saw no spirit so arrogant to God, not even him who fell from the Theban wall. Campanius of Canto 14, line 37, right? In other words, this is the most Promethean, we would say, the most nasty of all the ones that Dante says I met. Speaking no more than Vanni Fucci fled. And next, he says, I saw a centaur full of rage. Where is he? Where's the bitter one? He cried as he charged up. I think more snakes than lodge in Marmara swamp were riding on his coop. This is at the Tuscan coast, where tremendous amounts of swampy area where the snakes all hang out. Swarming along his back up to the edge of our human form. He bore behind his nape along the shoulders a dragon with wings spread wide. If any blocked the path, it burned them up. This centaur's name is Cacus. Now, you'll remember Cacus from our study of the Aeneid, Book 8, line 227. You'll even remember that there was a special festival for Hercules, because it was Cacus who stole Hercules' cattle, and for that he got whacked 100 times and he was dead at the 10th time, right? This centaur's name is Cacus, my master said, who underneath the stones of Aventine many a time has made a lake of blood. We know about this from our study of the Aeneid. He doesn't walk the same road as his clan, because by theft and fraud he tried to get the splendid herd that lay near him, a sin that ended his crooked habits. He died for it when Hercules' club rained onto his head some 100 blows. He lived to feel 10 hit. While he was saying this, the centaur sped beyond us, and 3 new spirits appeared below. They went unnoticed by me or by my guide until they shouted to us, "Who are you?" At which we ceased our talk and turned to them. I did not know them, but as people do when chance disposes, one had some cause to name another. Where have we left Senefa? Now, this is Senefa, Dante, comes from a noble family. He was a cattle thief, okay? He said, to be sure my leader heard, I signaled him to stay alert with a finger that I laid from chin to nose. In other words, listen, right? Pay attention. Reader, if you are slow to credit what I tell you next, it should be little wonder. For I who saw it know that I myself can hardly acknowledge it. In other words, notice Dante has said this a couple of times. I know you're not going to believe what I'm about to tell you because it's so unbelievably grotesque and strange will be the language used later. But he says, I'm going to tell you anyway. While I was staring at the sinners below, a serpent darted forward that had 6 feet. No, this will be Siaphana transmuted into a serpent. And facing one of the three, it fastened on him all over. With the middle feet, it got a grip upon the belly. With each forelimb, it clasped an arm. Its fangs gripped both his cheeks. It spread its hind feet out to do the same to both his thighs, extending its tail to flex between them upward through to the loins behind. In other words, the snake interpenetrates. No ivy growing in a tree's bark sticks as firmly as the horrid beast entwined its limbs around the other. Then, as if made out of hot wax, they clung and made a bond and mixed their colors. And they began to interpenetrate. Human becoming snake, snake becoming human. And neither could be construed as what it was at first. So, as the track of flame moves over paper, there's a shade that moves before it that is not yet black, and the white dies away. It's a brilliant simile, right? The other two were looking on and cried, Ah me, now look at how you change, Agelno. Already you are neither two nor one. This is Agelno de Brunichalis, who is another thief, right? Now the two heads had become one. We watched the two shapes grow into one face where both were lost. Again, that notion of some sense in the afterlife, you lose identity. Thieving is one of them. The sides grew 2 arms, fused from lengths that had been 4. Thighs, legs, chest, belly merged, and in their steads grew members that were never seen before. All of the former features were blotted out. A perverse shape with both not what they were, yet neither such. Its pace deliberate. It moved away. The whale lizard can dash under the dog day's scourge, darting out between the hedges so it seems a flash of lightning if it spurs across the road. So did a fiery little serpent rush, and this is Francisco de Cavalcante, toward the bellies of the two who stayed. Peppercorn black and livid, it struck out, transfixing one in the place where we are fed, bit him in the belly button. When life begins, then fell before his feet, outstretched. Notice we are fed in utero through the navel, and now of course the transformation, the turning around on itself. The pierced one gazed at it and stood, not speaking, only yawning as if a fit of sleep or fever had taken him. He eyed the serpent him. From this one's wound and that one's mouth smoke violently flowed, and their smoke met. Now we're going to get this observation from Lucan and Ovid that Robert Pinsky was commenting on in his little essay. Let Lucan now attend in silence, who has told the wretched fates of Nasidius and Celebus, two who died by snakebite, till he has learned what I shall let fly next. Let fly. It's fun, right? And Ovid, who writes of Cadmus and Arethusa, again in Metamorphosis 5, let him be still, for though he in his poet craft transmutes one to a serpent and makes the other spell transformed into a fountain, I envy him not. He never transformed 2 individual front-to-front natures, so both forms as they meet were ready to exchange their substance. This is something beyond anything anybody else has done. Dante the poet is saying, I'm the first to ever tell you about this. The twain reacted mutually. The reptile split its tail to make a fork. The wounded one conjoined his feet. The legs and thighs were pressed so tight, no mark of juncture could be seen. The split tail took the shape the other lost. Its skin grew softer, and the other's hard. I saw the arms draw inward to be encased inside the armpits. The animal's feet appeared to lengthen as the other arms grew less. If you were putting this on film, this would be horrific, would it not? The hind paws, twisting together like a cord, became the member man conceals. That becomes his penis. The wretch had grown 2 feet, while the smoke veils each one with colors that are new and grows hair here and strips it there. The one shape falls, the one comes upright. But neither turned aside the unholy lights that stared above the muzzles, the eyes. They each were changing. The one who newly stood drew his in towards his temples, and from the spare matter from that, ears issued from the head, behind smooth cheeks. What didn't course to an ear, but was retrained, became the face's nose, and fleshed the lips to the thickness they should bear. He that lay prone propelled his nose and face forward, and shrank his ears back into the head, as a snail does its horns. He's trying to give us some kind of a word picture, like a snail going back, right, into its shell. The tongue that was whole and prepared for speech was split instead, and in the other the forked tongue formed one piece, and the smoke ceased. The soul that had been made a beast fled down the valley with a hiss. The other, speaking now, spat after it, turned his new shoulders on it to address the third, and said, I'll have Boso trot on all fours down this road as I have done. Some have argued this is, in fact, the nephew of Boso Dante, who will come back to us in Canto 30, line 42. And so, I saw that seventh dead weight transmute and mutate, and may its strangeness excuse my pen, if it has tangled things. If this is hard to follow, he says, I'm sorry, I'm doing the best I can to give you a picture of it. Of course, I mean, it's a compelling image. I mean, Dante, obviously, speaking a bit ironic here, obviously his poetry has captured the imagination. And though my eyes were somewhat in confusion at the scene, my mind somewhat bewildered, yet none of these could flee to hide himself so secretly that I could not distinguish well the face of Pucia Scarantio, one of the three companions that we first took notice of, alone was not transformed. The other was he whose death, Gavil, you have good cause to grieve. There was a mass killing because of a vengeance in the town, and almost everybody got wiped out in the town of Gavil. In other words, thievery often will lead to murder. They are symbiotic in many ways. Well, that's some compelling stuff. Canto 24, 25. Let's work now at levels 2 and 3 quickly. At 2A, well, think of it. Stealing transforms somehow the thief, right? It ruins your soul to steal or to cheat. Very interesting. Of course, stealing is the worst fraud because of the ripple effect, right, that it has. And then the other one that takes us back to the very beginning of 24. Sometimes when you want to quit, you need to hear the up on your feet passage to be able to get through to the next. Well, the symbolism at 2B, well, I mean, it's self-evident, isn't it, right? The snake symbolism, the evil, the transformation, it's all powerfully there. The irony, of course, is that the thief is actually often called a snake. And the snake becomes the shade, and the shade becomes the snake, and then it's back and forth again. Of course, we have the symbolism of the phoenix as mentioned as well, and the irony that although you can come back and be transmuted again and again and again, this metamorphosis thing happening over and over again, you're always stuck in hell, aren't you? There's the irony. Well, can we say it? Dante is poet. Whoa. It's almost as if, one of my students once said this, it's almost as if I didn't think he could outdo himself, and then all of a sudden we get to Canto 24, 25, and it's like, whoa, okay, so you outdid yourself one more time. Dante is politician. Obviously, what is he saying about Florence and all of Italy? This is it, right? That the thieving and the greediness has led them to, we're changed. We're somehow corrupted in fundamental ways. Dante, as philosopher, of course, will talk about the change at the ontological level. We are fundamentally a different person if we are a liar, if we are a cheater, if we are a thief. Because fundamentally, we cannot relate to others so well. Notice somebody who's a chronic liar. Can't believe anybody anymore. You lose your capacity to trust, in other words. Okay, at 3A, well, we've got lots and lots of references we could make to snakes in all kinds of literature. And you'll remember as well that, remember, Anchises actually comes out of the ground as a snake. Do you remember this? And Aeneas was like relieved by all of this, right? Sometimes snakes can be understood as good, sometimes snakes understood as bad. Notice as well in Homer, there was that kind of strange dance with thievery, so that sometimes it's considered to be a good thing if you can go and steal somebody's armor or see somebody's horses. You'll remember Diomedes and Odysseus in Iliad 10 will under cover of night. And then other times, like for example what the suitors are trying to do in the Odyssey, they're trying to steal. You remember that? In fact, Odysseus, right before he kills them, that's what he said. You tried to steal my world from me, and for that you all must die. Well, of course, there's all kinds of texts about transformations as well. Write down Kafka's Metamorphoses. We will get to that one at the conclusion of our AP study. And reading this passage will help us to get there. Obviously, Ovid and Lucan have been mentioned as well. What is your favorite text about transformations? What is your favorite text about a thief who has to somehow transform himself or herself, and in the process loses himself or herself through the process of thievery? Finally, at 3b, well, you knew this was coming, right? What was a time that you stole or you cheated and it fundamentally did kind of change you? What was a time that someone stole from you and you felt violated in some fundamental way? Not just a physical violation, that is to say I lost something, but there's something psychological. I had something and then it was taken from me. And I have to kind of deal with the fact that now I live in a world where I'm aware that that can happen, and it can make me bitter, it can make me frustrated. Finally, and you knew this was coming, when was a time in your life when you could have used the up on your feet, this is no time to tire lines? It's time to go to work. We have more to do. You want to be remembered? That is to say, that kleos of the Iliad and the Odyssey and the Aeneid. You want to have fame? You want to make your life transform. Notice how transformation can be both positive and negative, right? You want to transform your life. You want to find a way to get out of this hell and get on with your life. Get up. You can't sit here. You got to keep going. If you'll think about it, all of the people in hell that we've met to this point somehow acquiesced. They somehow gave up. Do you remember that famous essay by Martin Luther King Jr.? Oppressed peoples respond to their oppression in 3 characteristic ways. Do you remember what the first one was we talked about in your junior year? Acquiescence. You sit there and you just let them beat on you. Of course, MLK will say, something wrong about that because you're not your brother's keeper and you're not taking care of your oppressor by allowing him or her to oppress you. But corrosive hatred and violence is the second way, and that also is problematic for reasons, of course, that MLK would have known from his study of Dante and, of course, Inferno. That is to say, an eye for an eye makes the whole world blind, he quotes in that essay from Gandhi. And then finally, the third way, which he says is kind of like the Hegelian synthesis between the two, non-violent resistance. That notion of when you're ready to quit, sometimes you have to keep going. King's letter from a Birmingham jail will, of course, play the same game. When was a time you had to keep going? Well, that's some compelling stuff in Cantos 24-25. We'll now turn to Canto 26 and 27. This is Pouch 8, Bolgia 8. These are the false counselors, and guess what? We finally are ready to see Ulysses. Yeah, I just mentioned Odysseus. Here we go. Of course, Odysseus could pretty much have been in any one of the circles. Dante decides to put him here, next. I hope you'll come back. I hope that this study is benefiting you as much as it is me. Thank you.